You've done the hard work, dug deep, faced yourself, tried to change. You've extended the olive branch, the teacup, the handwritten note, and still, silence, resistance, rewrite after rewrite of the same painful script. In Wonderland, doors talk and flowers sing, but sometimes the people we long to connect with the most, build walls too high for even magic to climb. This series is for those moments when your vulnerability is met with rolled eyes, when your growth is seen as betrayal, and when trying to reconnect feels like shouting through a hedge maze. You're not imagining it, you're not too much, and no, you don't owe anyone a version of yourself that shrinks just to fit inside their comfort zone. This is the wall and the Wonderland, a journey into what it means to seek closeness, and what it costs when others refuse to meet you halfway.
Imagine this. You're in the family garden, pruning your part of the story carefully. You've been tending it, clipping back the moments you're not proud of, nurturing the ones you are. You think that there's still hope for something beautiful to grow. But somewhere else, someone is planting weeds. Not obvious ones, not dramatic, just small things. A sigh at the right moment, a concerned look, a carefully crafted story, bent just enough to favor them. They don't need to lie outright. All they need is tone, ambiguity, repetition, and charm. Oh, charm. By the time you notice, it's already spreading. The others don't ask what happened. They ask what's wrong with you. You show up to the family table and everything shifted. A little colder, a little quieter, like they already held the trial while you were outside picking flowers. And now, all eyes are on you. Not curious, accusing. This is the court of hearts, where family isn't always fair, where the truth can wear someone else's face, where one person's whisper becomes everyone else's verdict. And you're not even allowed to testify. Today we step into that courtroom, not to beg for innocence, not to prove we're good, but to name what happens when someone turns love into leverage and rewrites the story until even you start to question what really happened. There's always one person in the family who somehow becomes the narrator, the one everyone listens to, the one whose version of events is treated like fact. They speak, and others nod. They frown, and everyone else pulls away. They cry, and the whole room rushes to comfort them, even if they were the one holding the match when the bridge caught fire. This is the Queen of Hearts, Family Edition. Not always loud, not always obvious, but dramatic in just the right moments. Persuasive in just the right way. They don't need to rage to rule. They just need to pull strings, play the victim, and let the rest of the family do the dirty work. They orchestrate quietly, whispering through tears, planting just enough suggestion to tilt the room. And before long, they don't even have to twist the story anymore. Others will do it for them. They cherry pick your lowest moments, the time you snapped when you were sleep deprived, the tearful text you sent after weeks of being ignored, and hold on to them like evidence, not context, not the whole truth. Just your rawest reactions, framed as your true nature. And the rest? They don't see the full picture. They see a highlight reel of your worst days and a carefully sanitized version of the Queen's. The tantrums become episodes. The boundaries you tried to set become attacks. You go from family member to problem, from person to threat. This is how it starts. Someone says, "You're just really emotional." Someone else nods and says, "Yeah, I've noticed that too." Another adds, "Honestly, I've always felt like I had to walk on eggshells around them." And suddenly, it's not a misunderstanding. It's consensus. That slow shift from one person's misunderstanding you to a whole group watching you with suspicious eyes. The warmth goes first, then the invitations, then the benefit of doubt. Real world signs, you start getting left out of group chats, or worse, You're still in them, but they go quiet the moment you message. You notice conversations that clearly happened about you, and yet no one's brought them to you. Everyone seems concerned. You hear it in their tone, the way they ask if you're okay, but not with curiosity, more like confirmation. Like they're checking a box. You've been labeled. And labels in the family stick harder than truth. Here's the twist. The Queen of Hearts doesn't always know they're doing it. Sometimes they truly believe they're the victim. They feel hurt by you. And instead of confronting that, they collect allies. They build safety by building walls around themselves and between you and everyone else. And the rest of the family? They follow the loudest pain. Not the truest, just the loudest. The most palatable. The one that doesn't make them uncomfortable. Because it's easier to go with the Queen's version than sit with your truth, which might ask them to question what they've accepted as normal. In this twisted Wonderland court, being too much becomes your whole personality. Too sensitive, overdramatic, always starting drama. They don't remember what hurt you. They remember that you reacted. So now you're the one stuck, watching as the Queen smiles sweetly at the tea party, while everyone pretends they didn't hear the screaming just a moment ago. And maybe worst of all, you're still trying to play fair. Still hoping if you explain it clearly, someone will see it. Still believing that if you just stay kind, stay calm, stay good, it'll turn around. But this is the Court of Hearts. Fair doesn't live here. You don't have to keep performing for their comfort. You don't have to shrink just to be invited to a version of a family that only accepts you in pieces. Because the truth? If someone has to rewrite you to feel safe, if your whole identity has to be twisted so theirs can stay clean, then they were never hearing you. They were listening to a story that made them feel better about themselves, their choices, and the roles that they're too afraid to question. You were never too much. You were just too honest for a story built on silence. And that's where your power begins. It's a strange kind of trial. No one says your name directly. No one accuses you out loud. But the verdict is already written in the way that they stop calling. The way they say, "I hope you're okay," without asking what really happened. The way the room tenses slightly when you walk in. This is what happens when silence becomes a strategy. Not to protect peace, but to protect comfort. See, families don't always side with the one telling the truth. They side with the one who causes the least emotional discomfort. The one who cries softly, not screams. The one who smiles through manipulation, not the one who breaks down from pain. The one whose version of the story doesn't require them to face hard things like abuse, favoritism, general denial, or their own complicity. This emotional laziness dressed up as neutrality. They don't want to pick sides until someone shows feelings that scare them. And then suddenly, they're picking. Not because they know what happened, but because one story is easier to believe than the one that makes them question themselves. It's easier to call you too reactive than to admit that they've looked away for years. It's easier to believe the one who stays composed than the one who's cracked open. It's easier to label you the problem than to confront that the peacekeeper in the family has been keeping the peace by silencing others. And here's the heartbreak of it all. You're not punished for lying. You're punished for feeling, for being messy, for being loud, for saying this hurts in a way that doesn't flatter them. Does it matter how careful you are? How many times you check your tone? They've already decided that your emotion is the enemy, and that the one who stayed calm must be telling the truth. That's how gaslighting takes root in families without a single word ever being spoken. No one sits you down and says you're wrong. They just don't respond. They don't ask questions. They nod along when someone else explains you. They let the silence grow like envy around the version of you that they prefer. A version where you're irrational, unstable, too much, always starting things. Even if they were never in the room, even if they never saw the full picture, they act like they know because someone else got to them first. And now that false version is being passively reinforced at every turn. You start to doubt yourself. Maybe I was dramatic. Maybe I should have said it differently. Maybe I was out of line for even bringing it up. But let me pause you here, because here's the key. You were not wrong for reacting to be hurt. You were not wrong for needing clarity. You were not wrong for expecting accountability. You were just inconvenient to a story that needed you to stay silent. It's like being trapped in a courtroom where the evidence was burned before you arrived, and the jury is made up of people who only remember your worst day. They don't care what provoked you. They don't want to know how long you were trying to keep the peace before you finally cracked. They just remember that one loud moment because that's all the Queen of Hearts told them about. And now you're walking around carrying that sentence, while the real manipulator gets sympathy and soft forgiveness. This kind of emotional trial doesn't just hurt, it erodes your sense of reality. You start thinking if no one else sees it, maybe it's not real. But it was real, and you deserve to name that, even if no one claps, even if no one comes rushing to your side. Because here's the truth. Silence isn't neutrality. It's a choice. And when people choose comfort over clarity, they've already picked their side. And it's okay if that realization breaks your heart. It's okay if it makes you grieve a version of a family you thought you had. But don't mistake their silence for proof that you were wrong. Their refusal to face the truth isn't your shame to carry. Not anymore. Sometimes the hardest part isn't what happened, it's what didn't happen. No one stood up for you. No one asked your side. No one even noticed that the story wasn't complete. And when that silence becomes louder than any lie, you start to wonder if you're just supposed to live with it, carry it, be the character that they chose for you, forever. But here's the thing. You don't need the courtroom's approval to hold your truth. You don't have to win back the whole garden to grow something real for yourself. So what can you do? First, validate your own version. Write it down, speak it aloud, draw it, cry it out, whisper it to your pillow if you have to. Just witness it. Because even if no one else saw the full story, you did. You know what you felt. You know what you tried. You know what you said and what was missing. This isn't about clinging to victimhood. It's about giving yourself permission to not be erased. Next, let go of the courtroom. You don't owe anyone an airtight case. You don't need to cross-examine your own pain for credibility. This isn't a fair trial. It's a house built on bias. And you were never going to win an audience that already decided the ending before you entered the room. So step out. Stop waiting for the apology that's never coming. Stop rehearsing the speech that will never be heard. Stop setting yourself on fire to prove you were never dangerous. You weren't. You were hurt. And your reaction was human. Remember this. One person's version of you does not cancel out your existence. You are not a footnote in someone else's monologue. Your truth is not disposable because it makes people uncomfortable. And even if the rest of the family nods along with the false version, that story is still incomplete. It doesn't include your context. It doesn't include your healing. It doesn't include the nights you sat up wondering if you were really broken or just misunderstood. Find one safe person, just one. It doesn't have to be a sibling. It doesn't have to be a cousin. It might not be family at all. It could be a friend, a therapist, a journal. Anyone who can hold your story gently without needing you to explain why it hurts. You don't need 100 people to see you clearly. You just need one who's willing to look with open eyes. And finally, reframe what family means. Because if someone only knows you through someone else's pain, if their entire relationship with you is filtered through another person's wounds or warnings, then they don't actually know you at all. That's not connection. That's conditioning. It's okay to stop chasing a version of family that refuses to meet you outside of the Queen of Hearts shadow. You can build your own table. You can make space for relationships that are real, mutual, curious, and clean. One that asks instead of assume. One that sees you, not just react to the story they were fed. You don't have to undo what was done, but you do get to move forward holding the one version that matters, yours. You walked into the garden with flowers in your hand. You came with honesty, with effort, with trembling hope that maybe this time things would be different. You didn't come to fight. You came to care. And when it hurt, The silence closed in and the story turned against you, and you still tried. You still stayed, you still showed up. But they didn't want the flowers. They only saw the thorns. And when the pain pricked them, even slightly, they blamed you for bringing anything at all. They gathered around the Queen's version of events, wrapped it in ribbons, and called it truth. Your grief? Exaggerated. Your anger? Dangerous. Your tenderness? Twisted. They left you thorns and called it proof. But here's what they don't see. You're still holding the truth. Quiet, whole, yours. They can sip their tea and toast to the tale that they'd chosen to believe. Let them, because that's what they have, a performance. What you have is a path, one lined with real memories, real effort, real ache, real growth. And while they keep circling the same story, you're walking forward. Wounded, yes, but free. You don't need their approval to heal. You don't need their permission to bloom elsewhere. So maybe today isn't about convincing them. Maybe today is not about betraying yourself to stay close to people who only ever loved you in pieces. Let them misremember. Let them misunderstand. Because here's your final truth. Your story didn't die in their mouths. It still lives in your steps, in your growth, in the people who meet you, not the version they were told to fear. And the garden you left behind, it never deserved your flowers in the first place. But somewhere ahead, there's new soil, new hands, and love that won't demand your silence to exist. Keep going. So if today's episode stirred something in you, if you've felt that sting of being rewritten, blamed, or quietly cast out, know this. You're not alone, and you are not the character they made you into. You were never the villain for feeling too much. You were never broken for needing clarity, or care, or truth. What you hold now is yours, your voice, your version, your story. And you don't have to prove it anymore. This was Wonderland Unlocked. Thank you for walking with me through the Court of Hearts. Until next time, trust your truth, and remember, the story you carry is still unfolding, far beyond the walls they built around you. You are not what they decided. You are what you decide next.